welcome to Film Study, an all-American podcast. Back at it again with Monda, everybody's favorite commentator. Episode 13. What was the title of the episode, Monda? I always forget these things.
It was Bring the Noise?
Yeah, right? Yeah,
Bring the
right.
Noise. Mm-hmm.
We're gonna go with that. We're gonna go with that. 13. It was a wild one. It was a very wild one to start, and we were about to go on another break. So, just very, very interesting. What were your initial thoughts on the episode?
I was very much ready to see how everything was going to play out as far as the aftermath of Crenshaw taking a knee and forfeiting their game. How we really was going to get to this point where Spencer and Liv put together Grace's party. I just wanted to see how it roll out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say this was entertaining and confusing all at the same time, yeah, it was entertaining and confusing.
That's a good way to put it. So we start out and we actually see Jordan, right, going to visit his dad in Crenshaw. And I don't know how I expected this episode to start out, but it wasn't that, and it's hilarious because we just filmed that Billy being a horrible dad podcast episode, which hopefully that will release sometime shortly after we release this, because I was just like, look at Jordan being a son and Billy still caring more for his team than his actual family.
Right, like Jordan shows up with coffee in hand,
legit, and
legit checking on his father.
Billy's talking to Frosto about how, oh my gosh, I'm just so proud of the team. He's like, Coach, were you upset? He's just like, no, I love you. Like, I'm proud of the team, and that's all I want is to be proud. And you guys really took a stand. And I'm like,
what are you talking about?
Sorry. Did you say it even before she released the footage, right? Did you say any of this to Liv when she was working on her podcast, or when she was going to the vigil that nobody showed up at? Like,
no, he says nothing to his daughter with regards to her activism and her pursuit of trying to help out Tamika and her family. But what I found interesting in that piece too is that you can see that Faso was very comfortable with the decision that they made, and Faso had came to some agreement that he does like Billy a little bit. He's an okay coach or what have you.
Yeah.
But what I find so interesting is that Billy's just so wrapped up in what his team has to go through next, because he's a coach, right? Yeah. He has to make sure that they get recruited, they get where they need to go. He was talking about the scrimmage that he was trying to put on and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But you also have to pay attention to the fact that you have children, sir. And your daughter is in the middle of this big fight right now because she put herself in the middle of it. We're gonna own that my fictional baby sister did that. But the fact is, you have not been that father support for her. Jordan is checking on you right now, rather you checking on Jordan, who has a concussion, who's currently also going to a possible annulment. We got problems with you. Seriously.
That is, you know what? We saw Billy talking to Carter. We saw Billy talking to Gracie, as you like to call her.
Yes.
You'll see in the podcast. You'll hear in the podcast, actually. But they were at the same party, and not once did Olivia and Billy interact.
Not at all.
Insane. We didn't even see them standing next to each other. Like, right. Okay, we'll get to that. Remind me to bring that back up later, because I have a lot of thoughts on this episode. But anyway, so we see Jordan, we see Billy trying to put together this scrimmage, and Jordan seems like he's trying to figure out how he can help, because he realizes like the big deal that is, and so that's sort of Jordan's storyline. He's helping with the potential scrimmage game, and we see him go talk to his coach Montez, about whether Beverly and Crenshaw can play together in this scrimmage game. Anyway, that's him. We didn't really see him in the episode other than that.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I am very much a proud Jordan twin fan right now because he was not being self-absorbed, Jordan. He's
No.
actually caring for Crenshaw, his dad, Spencer, and the team. Like, let me do something to be helpful in some way. Because usually Jordan's all about himself.
Yeah.
And what he can get out of it, even when he's working with Liv, what he's getting out of it, what's the outcome in his way. But to see him actually be on a crusade for others, I was like,
Yeah.
you know what, Jordan, I
It was
kind of
nice
like
to
you right
see.
now.
It was nice to see. I had the same exact thoughts in terms of Jordan, and I was like, look at Jordan not being selfish for once.
Right.
No, he's. I like Jordan. Jordan is he's Jordan. But so speaking of another member of the Beverly Hill Eagles, Asher family drama is back. We
Why
see
is it
him. We see him with his mom, which I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say his mom was like the only parent, like non main parent, not recasted.
Yes. No, they recasted his dad. His dad was, remember, in a couple episodes, his dad was there too.
No, that was his stepdad. That was his stepdad, or soon to be stepdad.
No. It was in a couple episodes prior when Coach Montez was
They
trying to switch.
recast. Oh my gosh.
They was trying to switch Asher's position. He was talking to his original dad. What they didn't recast him. So
Wow.
Asher's parents have remained the same.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
COVID, so horrible. COVID did not take Asher's parents. This is hilarious that it's Asher whose parents were not taken by COVID, but Layla, Simone, all the black parents taken by COVID. Wow, that's a word. That's a whole nother podcast there.
A whole nother podcast.
But anyway, so we see him talking to his mom, and back and forth. Oh, come to the restaurant that the guy owns, blah, 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 so that you can get to know him. Asher being broody as usual. And
Right.
like, nah, I don't want to. And then his mom, which I'm like, can Asher's mom, like, can you give some of Asher's mom energy to Grace and or Billy and Laura? Because how does Vanessa walk in for 2 seconds? Asher's mom is just like, who's that? Oh, you like her, and we have not gotten any of that energy for Olivia and Spencer.
It's a difference for this, and this is the reason why I say this, because Asher mom is not always around him, right? She's not always around him, and Vanessa was a little bit pushy. She was a little bit pushy, like, sis, you came out of nowhere and
But
introduced
it
yourself.
wasn't even. I feel like it wasn't even like a. Yes, I know what you're saying, but
Right.
as much as the other parents have been around them two together, it just
I
irks
understand what
me.
you're
It
saying.
just irks me. Like anyway, so there's that. We see Layla done been tagged in because they're just like, listen, Olivia's doing what she's doing over here. She can't take care of your problems no more, Asher. So tag Layla in from the
Tag
writers.
it.
We tap Layla, you done been tapped in. Now give them some advice about inviting Vanessa. They brought up their old relationship for the first time, I think, ever.
This is the first time ever. And actually, this is the second conversation that Asher and Layla have had on their own outside of episode 6 when they were
I know.
barbecuing.
It's crazy,
And
right?
right, and they're in the same friend group, mind you. And the first time that they've actually spoken to each other. And this conversation, while I wanted Layla to run away and, and mind her business.
Yeah, just stay away from that white
Like,
man, as
please,
the
like,
Twitter streets have been saying.
yeah, like Layla, I may give you a nickname that everyone knows who follows me what it is. But right now, I want you to have a peace of mind and don't let Asher seep into your mindset right now.
Yeah. But it
And
actually seemed like it was a good conversation, at least for him,
yeah,
and it made him feel better. Which the other thing was that, given everything that happened, it was sort of kind of acknowledged. And given where Layla is at the end of the episode, contrasting to that moment where she's with Asher, it seemed like, oh, they're sort of having just everybody move on at this point. Like, there's going to be no conversations. We're not going to see any residual feelings, any residual feelings, it seems like they're having everybody move on because
I don't
Layla
think.
was just like, yeah, like go after Vanessa,
But
do what makes you happy or whatever.
here's what I find interesting. While Layla was giving him advice about going on to Vanessa, why wasn't Asher asking Layla how she's doing?
Because we only
What?
care about the men's feelings on this show and not the women.
Apparently. Like I don't like I'm not a Layla fan, but at least check in on the woman, see how she's doing. She's giving you advice. Y'all have known each other for a while. Y'all have dated. Y'all both
Especially
want to
after
break up.
basically causing her breakup.
Right.
No, he was gonna break up with her anyway. But
Right.
literally, Asher had her all fired up at episode 6. It's like,
Right.
where's that energy today, sir?
Yeah, like
She's
check in on
self-absorbed.
her. Because as far as we know, this is the first time y'all have actually seen each other since 6. And that's 3.5 weeks because we haven't seen them interact in any other way.
Yeah.
How about you check in on her? Check and see how she's doing because she's doing that for you. So why is it that Layla doesn't get the same? And I know people are listening to this like I am shocked that Amanda's advocating for Layla support.
But
But
in
yeah,
terms of this episode, Layla and her storyline were just up and down.
right,
And I was going to talk about Carter and Billy, but let's move on to the Layla storyline next because uh, so her main storyline in this episode, besides being tagged in to help Asher with his family drama,
right.
was sort of Preach coming to Coop with some merch. To be honest, I didn't love the merch.
I didn't either.
I
So
didn't.
we're together on that.
But in the world of the show, they were like, "Oh, this merch is so dope! It's so fire! All this stuff." So whatever. Coop loved the merch, which should be her merch. But anyway, Coop loved the merch. Preach, and she was just like, "Preach, I got you. Let me set up this thing with Layla so we can talk about it because I'm signed to Layla's label." Which also is interesting because I have been working under the assumption that Coop signing with Layla was in effect Layla being her producer manager.
I think it was all around deal because Coop doesn't know what she should be doing at this moment. So everything
Exactly.
has gone through Layla.
But that's what I'm
And
saying. Like first she had Preach as her manager, right? Like a while
right.
ago.
Hmm.
And then I think it was that he was in jail or something. So Layla then helped her produce. But then she was just like I think we talked about this. I don't remember when we talked about this, but it was just like then she just decided, didn't even let Layla know before she
Yes.
announced it to Layla's dad, but was just like, "Oh, I'm signing with Layla," which again, she had already been producing for her, and then she managed her tour. So it's
And
just we've been working under the assumption that Layla has been all three in one: label,
right.
manager, producer.
And
So anyway,
there
yo, go ahead.
and so when they come together, so Coop sets up this meeting for them to come together. Can I just say this is the first time that I was like, yes, Layla, you put it out there. You because this is your money, your seed money. You want to know how it's going to work.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
want to make sure that Preach knows all of the ins and outs because your money is not just going to anyone in any process. And I was here for her having her research ready because if I'm going to give you my money, you better come correct and you
yeah.
better tell me how you're going to use my money.
Yeah, and that's what happened, right? And so Coop
Right.
brought Preach to Layla's house because Layla was so chill. She was just like, "Okay, cool. Like, let's set up a meeting. Let's get this going." Because it's not just gonna be like, "Oh, this person is suddenly on my team." Like, no, we got to talk about the details, the ins and the outs. So Preach came to Layla's house, and he was just like, it was basically like, you see the shirt, right? That's the merchandise. And I'm guessing what he has a trunk. I think he was like, "Oh, I have a trunk full more of these shirts." And Layla was like, "Okay, what about laptop stickers? What about like what about what's the other thing? Magnets or whatever you think about, like what about koozies? What about all of
Online
these other
orders.
things?"
Who's your accountant around the online orders? She was literally
Yeah,
asking
who's
all the
the
questions.
fulfillment? Who's the fulfillment? Like she did
Yes.
her research.
She was ready for him. She
Do
was
not
ready
play
for
with
him.
Layla V. Keating, okay? Her dad is a whole entire super producer. She's grown up around this her whole entire life.
She was like, "You're not just gonna get my money and just say, okay, here we go. I need to know
No,
what's going down with my
and as
money."
she should.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
uh, yes, and so she came with the things that she needed to know,
mm-hmm.
and Preach got upset, and it felt more like and then he was like then he went off on Coop he, like, stormed out, went off on Coop, was just like, "Oh, I thought you were doing the independent route," which is, like, basically she's still doing the independent route because she's the only one signed to Layla's label. And this was like and she's the person who decided to sign to a label in general. So like Coop basically created this label out of thin air. Layla wasn't doing this
Right,
otherwise.
right.
Like
Layla was just having fun at the time, and it became
having
a whole
fun.
business life
And she
for
has
her.
been not even just having fun, but being dedicated. Like
Yes,
planning a tour for this girl who doesn't even
yes.
don't even have hits like that.
And got the tour attached to her dad's, which is a bigger super tour. So then you got more people
Facts.
because you can use their marketing to get up to fans there. Like Layla, that was, as much as I am not a Layla fan, that was savvy. That was savvy.
Business savvy. We've seen Layla do nothing but care for Coop as Coop has this is what like the third time she's had issues with Layla. Why don't you ask your dad? She's just anyway. So that all happens. Preach gets upset. Says the whole thing about I thought you were gonna be independent and blah blah blah
Right.
blah blah. And I just felt like that was Preach being upset that he was no longer Coop's manager. But I'm like, talk to Coop about that. That ain't got nothing to do with Layla.
But
Nothing.
I think it's not only that, but it's also because he just got outsmarted by Layla.
That too. Yeah.
I think he got his feelings hurt because he
Yeah.
got outsmarted by Layla. And he
Yeah.
thought he would come in and be like, "This is what I'm doing. This is how we rock." And then Layla was like, "Not with my seed money. This
Yeah.
is what this is my label. We got to talk about it." And he got outsmarted by a young woman who was
Yeah.
ready for him, and so he was in his feelings too.
He was totally in his feelings and kind of rude because then he was like, oh, look it up what merchandising for dummies or whatever he said. Like, no, like these are real questions. But that left off on a weird note. Coop, is now like wondering what to do, whatever, ignoring Layla's calls, which we'll talk about. She ignores Layla's calls. Coop ends up going to the graduation, which we'll get to in a second. And the next time we see them interact is that Layla finally gets a hold of Coop, and Coop's just like, "Oh, I'm at the graduation. They're family." Like blah 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 blah. Somebody on Twitter was just like, "Why is Layla upset that Coop went to the graduation? Like it's the I Hate Spencer Club still going or whatever." But I was just like, I don't even know if it seemed like that, but it was just like you've been ignoring me all day,
And
and
I don't
you weren't honest about it. Like I don't know.
and I don't think it was very much so her going to the party and things like that, because she knows what Grace is in Coop's life. Like she knows.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I think is how Coop moved during that process. But also for the fact is you could have, like I always said, she shouldn't have been invited to the party, but we know that other people were invited later. And
Vanessa.
so if anybody followed me on Twitter, I was like, let's invite Layla. Like I invited Layla before the show started. Like I was ready for Layla to show up. So, but
I
for
know
Coop,
we needed that drama. We needed it.
yes, we needed that. And but for Coop to move as she does with someone who's her friend, right? Is at that moment, just talk to Layla, let Layla know what's going on. Because I was like, right now she's chilling by herself at home, while certain people who shouldn't be at this party, who probably have never met Grace a day before in their life, right, is there,
Facts.
Vanessa. But she's at home by herself.
Yeah. And
And
it's
so
and it's how you move like it's how you move because I really don't think Layla was upset about Coop going to see Spencer or whatever because even earlier when this first started Layla was just like he's your best friend or whatever. I respect that. We don't got to talk about it. And Coop is the one who was just like, nah, I broke up with him and blah 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 blah. Like
right.
that Coop is the one who has kept that inner and obviously Layla has been upset, but Coop is the one who has kept that combined upset energy, basically, um, towards Spencer. So I don't think it was about Spencer. I think, like you said, it's about how the way in which Coop was moving post this issue with the merchandising.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, on to the next. On to the next. Carter and Billy.
Oh my goodness.
Billy wants to have his game. Carter says, "You can't have the field, sir." Billy then says he's sorry, but this was, if I don't remember what exactly, like at which part this came in the conversation, but I'm like, didn't he like accuse him of like not caring for the students before he apologized?
Yeah, he did. He did it at the beginning. He did it at the end. So
So
yeah, he came at him wrong both ways. He came at him wrong both ways. I am shocked though that Billy openly admitted that he forgot about the incident because of his grief for his mother. And so for him to let that information out, and you and I talked about this on the Billy podcast, that he's gonna tell Carter, he's gonna tell Grace, he's gonna tell Spencer, but not the twins.
yeah.
And he ended up telling Carter because he told his own son and daughter.
Yeah.
That he's having these memory issues, but I can understand the context of how Carter ends up finding out.
Yeah. He hasn't told Grace yet though, so there's
yes,
still
and
time.
he hasn't told Grace, which we're shocked. But but for him to admit to that, I gave him a little applause for that, because sometimes Billy can be in his own feelings.
Yeah.
But then Billy was like, "I'm apologizing to you for what happened and everything, but you shouldn't take it out on the team. This is not about them. This is about us. Keep it with us and don't affect them in their future."
Mm-hmm.
And Carter's still in his feelings because of all of the things that we find out later when he was talking to Billy
Grace.
Gracie, about the effects of him having to leave home, because he blamed him leaving home on everything that happened.
Which when so that whole issue is going on. They're trying to figure out if they can use the field or not. Then Grace runs into Carter, and Carter just had the biggest smile on
Yes, he
his
did.
face when he ran into Grace, and I'm like, I love it. I love it.
And then Grace gave him the Heisman.
Yeah,
And
Grace totally shut it all the way down. She shut it all the way down, and he was all just sad.
yes, because she was like, you can go ahead and bust in the new people students you want to bust in and bust out. Well, you got your way. The season's over. And she was, because he had asked about Spencer, and she was like, "You're not caring about Spencer, so don't act like you do, because of your next steps." And so then he talks about wanting to increase the academics, taking money away from football. And Grace was like, "You have to think about everyone, all of these students." And then he explained, she's like, "And it's not about you and Billy anymore. Y'all need to heal."
Yeah, you need to like let go of your trauma, which they've just been giving Grace all of the Black woman wisdom tidbits
All
in
of
the
it.
show, the episodes, like this season.
Yeah.
I mean, she's always been that way, but it feels like more this season.
More of it.
But yeah, she was like, let go of your trauma, and he really thought about that. Especially because it was coming from Grace.
Right.
He's so fine. He's so fine. He's such a good looking man.
He is. And he explained everything, like the death of his nana, his parents splitting up and everything.
Yeah.
And she was like, "I understand that, but you need to heal. And it's not about these kids. Like, y'all need to take these kids out of y'all drama and y'all trauma. You should be focusing on those children." And he listened to her. He listened to her.
But are we gonna talk about, so later because we were just like, we were thinking about like, how is he gonna attend this party? Because we know he gotta show up somehow for Grace.
Right.
And you know who it was who texted him? Grace. Grace said, "I'm gonna get my little man. I'm gonna get my tall glass of water."
And I'm gonna let him see me in my cap and gown.
Legit. So Grace, we don't even know what this text says.
I wish
But he
we
was just,
did.
I know. So, Billy runs into him, blah, blah, blah. They have that new exchange. Carter's like, "You can use the field, blah, blah, blah." Billy walks away. But Grace and Carter start talking about this little text message and start smiling and smiling and smiling. And we're like, what was in that text message?
And then where was Spencer when they were smiling at each other?
That part.
I would have loved
Where's
to see
Mr. I'm angry?
I would have loved to see him witness that exchange.
Which, yes, as we move into the graduation party, flipping back to Asher for a second.
Right, go ahead.
Talking about Mr. I'm Angry and Asher and all of this. Asher, like, Spencer and Olivia are, which we'll get into their whole storyline in a second, but Spencer and Olivia are working together throughout the day to keep the ball moving with justice for Tamika. So, Liv is at Spencer's house. I don't even remember what they were talking about.
When they were at Spencer's house at the time?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
They
because the
were at the
window
party.
thing happened.
You're right.
Like when she put the poster up, that happened first. Yeah.
Yes, that happened first. Yes.
So they're putting the poster up. Spencer's just like, help me plan this graduation for my mom because she graduated and she didn't go to her graduation, blah, 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 blah. And Liv is just like, I really feel like I can't, stop working because, I got to get justice for Tamika and I don't want to let her down, all that stuff. And Spencer's like, take a break.
Let's do some Black Joy moments.
Let's do some Black Joy. Yes. So, and he quotes her advice that she gave him. I want to say it was in season 2.
Yeah, it was.
It was in season 2 about taking care of yourself. And I'm like, finally someone tells Liv that she don't be taking her own advice. But
it's the person that doesn't take his own advice. But so that's
facts, both of them are hypocrites. But so they're there. And they're putting up the flyers. They go later on to, I don't know, how did they end up at his house? Whatever. So they're at his house.
They at his house. She actually comes over after she has her heated thing with Laura. And
with Laura, and she's trying to figure out what to do for Tamika, and the cops had gotten fired, but Laura's still like, I can't talk about the case.
Yeah, and be a kid and be a teenager. So
be a kid, which was really good advice. And it was just, Liv and Laura scenes were weird because they've needed to talk for the past 2 episodes, 2 full-length episodes, and we still haven't gotten like a steady, like, actual conversation between the two. It's still weird, which I don't understand after the podcast, but whatever. They're not really communicating well still. And
Liv goes over to Spencer's house and asks if he still need help with his mom's party.
Yes. So she helps him, and she's like, yeah, I'll help you with the party. That's when they find out that they made the news.
Dylan calls them famous.
Yeah, Dylan calls them famous.
Sweet nut, but that's okay.
They walk down the street and some white people put up
the fist, and I was like, what is going on right now?
I was cringing so hard at that. Like, why? Who thought that was a good idea?
Because that right there was out of place, and it shouldn't have. This is on the streets of Beverly Hills, mind you. It's not like they're in Crenshaw.
And there was just so many things that, like, just again, because I work in this space, that were just so cringy to me. Like, I'm all about Black joy and Black joy being in your toolbox, as Liv later says in the episode. But the amount of times, like, Black joy was brought up, like, you say it like once, twice max. You know what I mean? Like,
it was interesting because you had these young ladies, I believe all of them were young ladies, put up the fist, and then as Liv is like, see, look what we're doing, then you have this gentleman going, what about the police officers that have family?
It was just so much all at once.
Right. And you get Liv riled up. Now, some people are all about, like, I just need Liv to sit down and be a teenager. I like feisty riled up Liv because
same. It was entertaining.
Because it's entertaining. Liv has always been this, people think that Liv is this nice little wallflower person. I was like, who have you met? This girl's been through rehab. Ain't no way she's just this nice little girl that y'all think is just this innocent little person. That's not happening. She has a brother who's a football player, who's a twin. You think that she has not been feisty all her life?
Yes.
Come on.
The other thing is, the way that they have just made Liv lack awareness this season, like, in the ways in which they have made that, don't make sense to me, and I'll explain a little bit of it. One is, like, someone having to explain to her what, like, a lie of omission was, which I'm like, I'm sure she knows what a lie of omission is, she's just lying, like, she's doing it on
Right.
purpose. She obviously knows that it's a lie, and she knows that she was hiding the truth. But that was one thing, and then today again, where, she was just like, "Oh, that, like, everyone is on our side now." Like, she's not stupid.
Right.
Like, I
And she
don't
knows this.
she's the exact opposite. Even, like, not obsessing, which I realize, like, everything is so close together with her relapse and with her interaction with the cops and all of that, so it's still fresh. But, the point at which, like, the max at which she was, obsessing over it just felt more heightened than it needed to be.
Right, which is interesting because if anybody paid attention to episode one of the things Asher asked Liv what she do over the summer, she said, I did my podcast and I was out there protesting with the people. So she already know what the process was and how
Yeah.
people were reacting. So for you to then be in episode 13 and her thinking that everybody's on her side and the fact
That
that she's not
part
going to be any like retaliation is unbelievable to me. So I'm gonna need you to be consistent, writers in
Can
K
we
and team.
talk about that? Because you saying that just reminded me, because Spencer told her in this episode, she was just like, "It's the way it's always been," which, as we know in episode 1, she did tell Asher, she was just like, "Just America showing its racist, you know what?" Like, I mean,
So how is it that all of a sudden she doesn't understand that in this moment while she's working with Spencer? Like, I need y'all to be consistent with her character and her character development and stop being all over the place. Now,
exactly,
but it
exactly.
could, but I see the part of when you're talking about the heightenance of it is that while in the beginning part of the summer, she may have been part of the movement of like going to protest and do stuff in the podcast. Right now, she's in the middle of it. She put herself in the middle of it
Yeah.
by releasing it. And so it's a heighten on the comments that are coming to her, right? Because they end up going to the house to bake a cake and
Yeah.
she's looking at the comments and Spencer's like, I thought we said we're going to stop looking at the news. And then she's going over the comments that they were saying about her. And Spencer was like, I get those comments all the time because I'm a football player. And he's talking about his hands. He said, which is funny. I kind of like that scene because I know athletes who will instantly go to like their comments on this on about what they do in their hands and stuff. So to
Yeah.
lighten it up, that was kind of like very much interesting. But with his little smooth talking behind,
Stop. Because
decided to come over and let her know that she's brave, she's inspired, and then he goes sneaking, you're beautiful,
you're beautiful.
bruh. What we doing?
And then she said, what was it? The comment before it was about her eyes. They were like,
Yeah,
if you want
gouge
to
her eyes out in
gouge my
hell.
eyes out, I'm already in hell. And he was like, those pretty eyes? Never. I'm
Those pretty
like,
eyes.
ugh.
I said, really, sister?
I know everybody loved it because it was Bolivia. And I loved it too. I love Spencer Lip, but it was so cringy to me because I like
I said, Spencer, you could have came better than that, sir. I needed you
literally,
to
I'm
come a
like,
little bit
where
better.
is Smooth and this proves to you who he is when he's around Olivia, because I'm like, where is smooth talking
But,
Spencer? Like, I'm
but
thinking like season 1 Spencer when Layla shows him the engagement ring, her father's engagement
he was
ring, and
like,
it's
it's
like,
too soon for us.
he was like, we're not
But,
even holding hands yet. Like, what happened to that Spencer?
but we
You over
talked
here being
about
like,
this.
those
We
pretty
talked about
eyes.
this in our Zoom. Remember, we like, this
Yeah.
boy doesn't know what to say around her. He's just like
He
so
does not. Somebody on Twitter was like, Spencer, if you want to kiss that girl, like, just say it. Like, just
just
say
go
it.
ahead and do it. Like it's okay. You at this moment you're close enough. Just let her
Literally, just do it. Like, you don't, because, sir, them lines are not coming out smooth at all. And
man,
then him humming the wedding song.
that was
What?
hilarious though. She was like, that's the wedding song.
It's just, I was like, what? Like, what are they doing? Like, you might as well just get together. Clearly, you're not having a conversation. Like,
But he at that point when she was like, thank you, because you know, you calm me down, you often do that, which they
yeah.
actually do that for each other, which
Yeah,
is
you make me feel better. Yeah,
make
they
me
make
feel
each other
better. And he comes around and he's about to kiss her. This boy, now for 3 months, almost 3 months, you have trying to get a healthy live on the same page as you.
Facts.
And she is she's on a healthy recovery. She is ready to kiss you, and you answer a phone call?
Sir, but okay, when I first saw that, like in normal speed, I'm not gonna lie, it looked like
they curved each other.
Yes, it did look like they curved each other, because I know that you talked about this on Twitter.
Yes.
And it was like the second time I was just like, oh, they were going for the kiss. But the first time I watched it, like when I was actually watching it, I was just like, it doesn't even look like the way that their heads were moving, they could actually kiss. You know what I mean? Like it was doomed from the beginning.
Right, it was a do for getting, because there was a smile on both of the characters' faces.
Yeah.
And someone on Twitter was like, that was Daniel and Sam, like doing
That's how I felt. It
video.
was literally like Daniel and Sam trying to act out like an almost kiss, and it just didn't.
Right. And
they just kept laughing. Like that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. It's like they couldn't stop. Just like we're just
because they knew it was gonna be an almost kiss. Like that's what it didn't seem like a kiss that almost happened. It literally seemed like it was an almost kiss.
Right. But the idea, and I said he has waited for this girl.
Yeah, and you're going like a little text message. It wasn't even a phone ring. Okay.
Right. You decided to not kiss her because of this little text message. And I said this to Jason on Twitter and email. Your boy dropped the ball.
He did. He dropped it. Because we look at Laura over here ignoring her texts and calls just an episode ago. So you're telling me that you let that one little buzz, that one little phone buzz disrupt you from kissing Olivia when you were in love with her? Sir.
No, sir. This is not working.
But yes, it was a funny, hilarious moment, and you know, the Spolivia fans have content for the next 2 weeks to.
They do, and they keep me laughing. I adore them. They keep me laughing.
Well, and the other part, I have to add this in. I have to add this in because we talked about this in the "Does Olivia Know" video,
right?
But people like blew up like what the cake looked like, and they were like, now Liv must be in love because she know that cake was looking like rough.
And they said and someone compared it to him saying the shoes were looking.
That was me.
I was like, they must be in love.
Me. I was just like, it's the shoes all over again. Serious, because when you actually look at the cake, I'm like, yeah, the frosting wasn't quite right. Like, it wasn't anything to be like obsessing over.
Not at all. But look, and
it was like the well-meaning. She was just like, because at first she was just like, oh, and like blah 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 blah. Like it's just their whole interaction, because you know that like little like awkward hand touch or shoulder, the whatever arm touch that she went to go give him. Like she didn't even touch. It was just weird. She was like, it's okay, like blah 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 blah. And then that's when she was just like, it does look really good.
But at least she knows this, that he can bake if he needs to bake or something.
And she has enlisted him to bake for her birthday.
Right. He can bake. That's the one thing that, and if we
don't know, a man who can bake.
Yes, Liv likes her ice cream. She likes, so
it's true.
You can get to Liv with some sweets and stuff. So go ahead and keep doing what you're doing, Spencer. So.
Another point to feel bad about Layla. Has Layla ever gotten any food? Asher over here bringing Liv ice cream.
Right. And then I know that one of my favorite reviewers, who's a Layla fan, is going to say this is, does Layla even know that Spencer can bake?
That part.
Like, does she know that he can bake and he enjoys baking cakes for his brother and his mom? And I was like,
and granted, Olivia just found that out, so that's something that he keeps quiet if Olivia doesn't know already.
Right. And so the thing is, like, what is interesting is that Liv is finding out things about him. Like she found out about his grandmother in Vegas, and things that, why didn't him and Layla find out as they were growing into a relationship? And it's an interesting concept of what is somebody willing to tell another person that they're in a relationship with, or have maybe a stronger bond with.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
no, it's
be
true.
vulnerable to put
And
that
even
out.
it's like the smaller things, right? Like
Yeah,
in Vegas, it was that they both were into Olivia and Spencer both were into Harry Potter, and like
right.
they hadn't had a
It's
conversation.
it's that stuff, and that's what also makes it. That's the part of the relationship I like, is the also the friendship. I'm going to tell you some stuff that other people don't know, or you're going
Mm.
to witness some stuff that other people haven't seen,
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
like.
it's been cute because Spencer and Olivia, I think, understood each other and had a deeper connection, but it was like it got deep right away. Like how Layla and Spencer got together right away, like it got romantic right away. I do feel like Spencer and Olivia had this deep connection, so it's nice to see them like start to find out like not as not as like deep and meaningful, but just like random facts about me.
Right. This is
Yeah.
the things I like, and stuff like that. This is what I don't like. This is what I'm not going to tolerate.
Yeah.
Um,
Not everything about is about my trauma with my
right.
abandonment with
Or
my
me being a
dad
football player and
or me
things like
being
that.
in rehab.
Right. What's interesting is because then they get the phone call, they go and see that the glass is broken, right? Um,
Listen, uh, and Gabby comes up, and this is what I'm gonna say about this. This episode was like the like NK and the writers' room, and like just the CW network being like, you haven't like used your allotted number of like cuss words today because
because oh my Lanta.
within this season we have not like
Like after, because we'll come back to them talking to Asher and everything. We'll come back to
yeah,
that.
we'll come back to that.
So they come out and Gabby decides to show her happy self up. And she decides to
You
call
talk
Liv.
about it because
Oh,
it's
we're
too
gonna
funny
talk
for
about
me to
this.
talk about it.
I done watched this scene so many times. So she goes and calls Liv and Spencer racist.
Yeah.
And she says, because you could
15
cops can protect
seconds.
themselves and your 15 seconds of fame. And that's when Liv went off. Like Spencer tried to take Liv away
It's
from her. He
15
tried.
minutes.
It's 15 minutes, you stupid B. And then all of a sudden, Gabby decides she wants to be bold and she wants to toss
It
her drink
was
on the
so
Liv.
aggressive. It was so
Yes.
aggressive.
And that's when you got Liv.
Twice.
Liv was ready to tear into her. If Spencer was not there, Gabby would have had to run very quickly.
And I'm gonna
Because,
insert the gif because it was hilarious. You see Olivia literally like pushing Spencer back, like,
right.
boy, if you don't get off me.
He does not know. I said this on Twitter. He has met the nice, sweet Liv. He has met
Yeah.
the rehab Liv. He has met the non-sober Liv. But he's not met the feisty, I'm going to kick her behind Liv. And he did not know how tough she was. Like
No.
she was pushing. I said, if Jordan would have saw that, Jordan was like, I'm surprised you can hold her. Because Liv was ready to tear
Yes.
into that girl. Literally.
I love whenever Spencer gets lives like
Like,
she's the true mean girl of the show. I'm gonna
yes,
say it. She's the true mean
she
girl of the
she is,
show.
because we
If there
talked
was
about
one,
that.
she would be it.
Yes, we talked about that on Saturday. Like she, when you push her buttons, she will go there if she has
Yeah.
to. And so he's trying to fight off her and tell Gabby, you better go because I won't be as nice as Liv. I'm like,
Which
Liv is
I
not
was
nice.
like,
What are you talking
sir.
about, sir?
Okay, so
Liv is ready to tear her a new one. And so then
exactly.
like Liv was like, no, that B needs to stay here because I'm gonna call the cops because she assaulted me. And then he
And
says
then
something,
yeah, that's when they had the whole conversation which we had earlier about him explaining like, oh,
right.
it's cops aren't
Yeah,
on our
and
side.
that the
Blah, blah,
cops are not going to come and help us. Really, we on our faces on the news for getting them fired. And then he talks about this is how like it's always been type of thing, and they don't value our worth, or our worth is not about them, or something of that nature. But the idea that Spencer has never met this Liv. Like
blah.
Spencer
It's
keeps
funny.
meeting moments of Liv that I find is hilarious. Like
Yeah.
in Vegas, he never met the Liv that keeps attacking Jordan, because
Mm-hmm.
Liv attacks Jordan every chance she gets. He's used to
Truly.
it. And so I said, you're now seeing the different levels and the complexity of Liv. The Liv that I have fell in love with since season one.
Yeah.
Like I knew all of that was underneath. I was like, I was just ready for it all to come out. And it's coming out. And it's
It
just
is.
funny to see Spencer's reaction to it. Because he's like, what is this?
Yeah. It's hilarious. And as you mentioned, basically Asher was just like, he was there when it happened because I think it was with his mom or whatever. And then he, volunteers his soon-to-be stepdad's restaurant. Yeah, soon-to-be stepdad's restaurant to have Grace's party because Spencer was like, I did this, I brought it out. And Asher was just like, why do you both always take on so much responsibility? It was the person who threw the brick and da 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 da.
And why was Asher so calm about Spencer and
I
Liv together?
don't understand.
This is shocking to me.
Asher is not, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it, Asher is not more mature than Layla. So the fact that we got, I'm gonna touch on this real quick, but the fact that we got Layla like looking at Dylan, who is apparently very popular on Instagram, over 1,000, over 1,200 likes on his post, man. But the fact that we got Layla looking at Dylan's Instagram about like the pictures of the party that she wasn't invited to, and we got her settling in on that picture of Spencer and Olivia, it just, it made no sense. Like, how are we getting a reaction? And especially because just an episode ago, right? Not even that long ago, because it was at the end of the episode, you were fine. And this is a day ago, right? It happened yesterday.
Right.
They said only literally it was yesterday at the beginning of the episode. So the fact that you were sitting with Olivia watching Spencer's game and now you're looking at a picture of them both and you're settling in on it, I don't know. It's just been inconsistent as far as who's upset. Because we even get, and I guess Asher knows-ish, because we get Olivia talking to him about his family, making jokes about cheating. Being like, oh, I guess you really had to not want to hang out with your future stepdad because you have
you put on a party with us in our complex relationship. And I was like, what do you mean by complex relationship? What does Asher know? Like,
it just
I need to know what he knows.
And he was just like, it's a little bit of both, basically being like a mix of him being more mature and him not wanting to talk to his dad. So it just, and then she told him to go for Vanessa if that's what he wanted, and whatever. It was a nice moment between the two of them, even though keep him away from her.
Right. Like, it's interesting because at that time, Vanessa was trying to be all hugged up near his mother and his future stepfather. And she calls Asher the D word twice in this episode. And I said,
that's why I'm like, the CW must have told them. They were like, oh, you have like 10 more cuss words you can use, so use them up.
And Vanessa,
or like, just it's network television, so it's only a certain number of
right. And I said, Vanessa, first of all, you better be lucky you were invited, and you were only invited because Layla had encouraged him to invite you, because he wasn't going to invite you.
Which at the end they have a little, which so much screen time dedicated to this couple that we do not care about, but we get at the end that Asher's just like, I want to go for what I want, which is what people have been telling him all day. And he's just like, and she says it's football because apparently she can read him.
all of a sudden.
But she's just like, it's not me, it's football or whatever. And you're going to miss out on all this, which, ma'am, I thought you said you didn't even like him 3 episodes ago, but that's neither here nor there.
And how does Ashley and Vaseline get a kiss on the cheek, but Spencer and Liv doesn't even get a kiss?
I don't even want to talk about, like, we have to because it's on the episode, but I just don't understand anymore. And that's,
it's interesting. So at this point let's touch back on Grace's party, because Spencer actually does a good speech.
Yes, he does. And Dylan starts out the good speech by being funny.
Dylan's a fool. He's like, Spencer, you got this. And the speech that Spencer gives is very poignant and very needed for Grace. Because while I have my issues with Grace, and people who have followed me will understand it, she does love her children. She's made her mistakes and things of that nature, but she loves her children. Mm-hmm. And she has sacrificed a lot for her children. And her children sacrificed for her to go to school. And for her to have made this accomplishment, she needed to be celebrated.
Yeah.
And so it was very important for her to be celebrated in that speech that he gave. And he quoted Liv in that speech, and he looked at her. I said, you little smooth talker, you. Grace needed that, and she needed to be celebrated, and she needed to be loved on for this particular moment.
So it looked like a good time, good food. I mean, the guy did it up. The
He did it up.
future stepdad did it up for sure.
He did a good job. And then we get to so she's being celebrated, and then we get to the football game, right? The football game that they thought they were going to have. Well, actually they had, but they come to find out that the other schools across the state has taken a knee and forfeited their games because Spencer's video went viral.
Yeah.
And so
Montez tells them, Coach
Montez tells them. And
so they're back in the playoffs, which we kind of knew that was going to happen because we never saw the Westlake game.
Right. And so then you have, but they still do the scrimmage, the scouts are there. And then there's that potential of they're gonna do this. They're gonna try to make sure that Crenshaw gets the spotlight they need, and these players get a chance that they deserve. The part that really got me was the ending, and it was Liv driving.
Yeah.
First of all, someone was like, who gave Liv a car? Why is she behind the car?
This is only literally
a couple of days
since the relapse, and a couple days, and not even a couple days. It's been like 2 days or whatever.
Yeah, 2 days since
she got grounded.
Right, she got grounded, but she over here, her mama said, go be a teenager. You know, sometimes when your parents are just tired of you, and they're like, just go, just get out the house. But the fact that she had the wherewithal to pay attention that there's a cop following her. And if anybody I've had that experience of me just driving down the road and all of a sudden I see a cop.
You don't even know when it's gonna happen or when you're gonna have that anxiety, but
right. And literally I'm following the stop signs and stuff like that, like nothing happened. And she had the wherewithal to call her mom. I didn't call anybody, and when I got pulled over, and it's in broad daylight and no one's there. And I love that Laura's like, stop where there's other people around. Mm-hmm. Don't you stop like on the side of the road, stop where there's other people around. And Liv being like in a panic and listening to her mother and everything, and Laura staying on the phone. And then the cop, because those two people are there, decided to like drive slowly past Liv. And like I know you ran those plates, you knew who car that was.
Yeah.
Right. And so whatever your reaction was going to be, but Liv being in that situation and Laura being there for her. And then people on Twitter was like, I'm tired of them putting Liv in these plot lines, trauma moments. Like, let this girl just be happy for a moment.
Her live, like she just talked about how she's gonna have Black Joy, have it in her toolkit,
and then all of a sudden
it was an intimidation tactic.
It was an intimidation tactic. And then some people were like, well, I don't want this to happen. Like, this is a poor portrayal of police officers and things of that nature. But it does happen. I myself
it happens all the time.
It happens. And I literally was just turning a corner, minding my business. It happens. So for that to happen, considering she's already on the spotlight of news, I can see this actually transpiring. But how it ended, I said, next episode, Laura's about to kill somebody because you literally just tried to intimidate her daughter.
Yeah.
And so, because one of the things we didn't talk about, and I don't know if we have time, is how
we're running up on time.
Yeah. And we need to talk about this because in this episode, Laura did try to do a check-in on her, but Liv was feeling too bad and they didn't have this conversation.
Yeah, and I don't know why Laura didn't push. We're gonna talk about how about we'll end this real quick. We'll do a predictions video.
Okay.
Art recording. And the last thing we'll mention is Carrie from the rehab center with Layla randomly showed up. People are excited about this because
I'm scared.
I'm one of those people who are scared because I'm like, this girl's talking about she got out today. She knows where you live. She didn't know this, but you're in a very vulnerable state. I don't know. It was just random. I didn't like the music. The music was very ominous when she came to the door. I know people are happy about it, but we'll see. We'll see where the storyline goes. But that was the episode. That was episode 13. And we'll come back to you with some predictions.